What's up, everybody? How you guys doing today? It's your boy Abdel on Del Tales. Definitely got to talk about this Google event today for Pixel 8, so let's get right to it. Alright, so the Google event today was actually quite interesting, but I'm really only going to cover the main parts that people truly do care about, which nowadays when we look at smartphones, let's just be honest, people only care about a select few number of things. One, the camera, two, the battery life, three, we're going to talk about the magic editor tools, and then four is going to be AI performance when they need it. So the magic editor tools, that's kind of a weird one because this is more exclusive to Pixel and Android, so we'll come back to that one. But basically people wanting to edit their phones, edit pictures and videos on their phones. So Google announced today officially the Tensor G3. We finally able to see it. And the first thing you're going to notice is it is not going to be as powerful as the Apple's A17 Pro as people thought. Well, I'm not even sure if really people thought that was going to be the case. I think it was more or less chasing the Snapdragon Gen 8, Gen Plus 2. So I think that was kind of the benchmark for it, and the Gen 3 is going to be even much better. I think the Gen 3 will actually beat out the A17, but if we're being all honest, the power of the processors is not the end-all be-all. At the end of the day, Android is still a much bigger software than that of iOS. When we're talking lines for code, what they're doing, how processing is handled and all that, it's very different. They're not the same. And what I really want to see is, Apple always touts themselves as, hey, we have the best processors, we have the best this. I would love to see the A17 run Android. But we all know Apple will never let that happen because it will expose a lot of its weaknesses if it has to. When you're making a more powerful chip to run a smaller software, it's going to work differently. Just like when you run a more powerful chip on a Mac versus running other chips on PC, they're doing completely different things. Windows is much bigger software than that of Mac. However, Apple is able to zero in, especially with their M Ultra processors for Macs, they're able to zero in and optimize everything specifically for what they need it for. That's not how PC works. PC optimizes for very specific tasks and very specific applications, and then you get to choose everywhere from lower range to ridiculously high-end desktop PCs. So, they work completely differently. They have a different task. Apple's only worried about Mac, whereas PC processor makers have to worry about the entire range. So completely different markets, completely different ideas that back them. And, that's a video for another time to talk about, but that would be a good topic to actually cover. However, let's get back to the Tensor G3. So it's not going to be as powerful as the A17 Pro. We know that. We knew that coming in. That was not a surprise. It kind of sucks in some cases for us power users, but what we also have to realize is power users are not the majority of the market. The majority of the market does not even use their entire phone. They don't even know what their phones are really capable of. And these companies know that. They're not dumb about it. Google knows this, Apple knows this, everyone really knows this. Whether it's Samsung, Xiaomi, Apple, they all know. People do not use their entire phones. It's well known. So for the average user, you're not going to notice a difference. But I do wish that Pixel phones nonetheless could come out with an upper tier. Let's say like a Pixel Pro Max, which would allow you full capabilities of the chip, and actually unlock extra performance that the average person just doesn't care for. I actually think people would pay for that, and looking at phones like the iPhone Pro Max is kind of an example of that. So my future wish for Pixel phones is I really do hope they stop working with Samsung to make these chips. I don't think that's the best route for them. However, let's not forget, Samsung themselves have already ditched their own chips, but let's ignore that for now. However, what I do want to see is I really hope Google finds a way to work with AMD, bring Ryzen and RDNA to mobile, which Samsung tried to work with AMD to bring RDNA, but we don't know if that will actually happen or not because Samsung doesn't want to use their Exynos chips. So if Google can be first to bring that to market, I think that will be the performance boost that everyone is waiting for. I personally think AMD is the best processor maker on the market. It used to be Intel. AMD took that over. There are other players in that field, but I just don't think anyone's better than Ryzen right now. And for mobile, Ryzen is something that we just haven't seen. We've seen the Intel Atom that didn't pan out. I really want to see AMD take their chance at the mobile market because I think they would excel in a lot of ways none of us are really expecting. So the Tensor G3, it was temporarily mentioned that gamers will have a better performance, but they didn't show us any examples in the entire presentation. It was mentioned to be better, but with no examples, how do we really know what to gauge it against? So that's more of something we just have to wait for, grab the phones in our hands and actually put some testing into work. I don't expect gaming to even be on par with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Probably the 8 Gen 1 maybe. It'll probably be on par with that, but definitely also not reaching the A17 Pro, which we've seen first party companies actually, or third party companies bringing their AAA titles games over to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So, we're not expecting that level of performance, but just something better, I guess, for those gamers out there, because there are a lot of casual mobile gamers and they like to play their games and they want the best performance they can possibly get. And I don't think that's an area that Google focused on enough, and I still don't think Google's focused on it enough. I think that's something they have to come back to and really figure out in the future. Also, video capture on your phone has always been an Apple staple, which is actually very interesting because for the first time we can actually say, well, per the Google presentation, video might be on par, if not better, than
Look
iPhone.
at how it compares to a different phone we picked up
because
recently.
iPhone has really
You can
always
see the
dominated
skin
the video
tone
side
is
of
lifelike
cameras,
and properly
whereas
balanced,
Pixel
while
has
the
always
mountains
dominated, for
and
the most
skies
part,
have
on,
full
the
dynamic range.
pictures. But now
Every
can
frame of
Pixel
this
actually
4K
fix the whole
video
problem
has
with
gone
the
through our
video capture
HDR plus image
and
pipeline.
then
And when you use
tack
video
on the pictures
boost
and
in
just
low
take
light,
everything from
it
iPhone in that sense?
automatically enables night sight
That's a good
video
question.
for the
I don't
first
know.
time
That
on
remains to be
Pixel.
seen.
Video boost is coming to Pixel 8
There are still a
Pro
lot of
in a
problems
feature
with the
drop
Pixel
in
7 Pro,
December. Just a few
which I
months
personally
ago,
use as
we
my
launched
daily driver.
Bard as an early
However,
experiment.
the Pixel 8 Pro definitely has some perspectives in it in which I think are going to be good winners for everyone. Especially those who love to take videos of their children and they want to edit the sounds in the background out and all of that, and the magic editor tools. That's going to be huge. And then there are phones like the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V, for example, or the where they have all of these professional tools that if you don't really know how to use DSLRs, it might not be the best phone for you because they're so focused on the camera. But the camera experience in those phones is all about having full control, especially something like from the Xperia phones. So if you're not that familiar with professional cameras, how would it come out to actually using one of those things? That makes it kind of complicated. So I think the best route for someone like Google, and even Apple has been doing for quite a while, with ProRes and all that, is to give people these tools, but at the same time have base standard tools that can work as well as Google or Apple may want them to work. So that's going to be a big difference, and we really got to wait to see how this plays out. I can definitely tell you the Pixel 7 takes good videos, like good video quality. However, I wouldn't say it matches the iPhone 14, which it would be compared to, the iPhone 14 Pro. I would not say it matches that. But if Pixel 8 is better than the iPhone 15 Pro or even 15 Pro Max with ProRes and all that, that's something to keep an eye out for, because I think that could really cause a swing in the market. Now, one thing Google also mentioned in the presentation is the fact that they also have been the only company with multiple digits of growth. Well, we have to remember, Pixel phones on the market are only maybe 2 to 4% of the market. So if they have a certain exponential growth, it might just be how much the company is growing as far as developing their phones to be better for the average user. However, you have to remember that's nowhere on par with your Apples of the world or Samsung or Xiaomi or anything like that. It's nowhere on par with that. But it's a good sign that you are heading in the right trajectory, and that's what we want to see. So without further ado, since we've mentioned Apple quite a bit in this conversation, let's talk about what I call the Apple effect. I think Apple has the smartest marketing. If there was anything that Google was missing to get the Pixel phones in people's hands, I think it was the marketing. You know, Apple has found a way to turn the iPhones into a status symbol. You know, I don't think any other phone company has figured that part out yet, or how they can do that. You know, you can bash Apple as much as you want, but they have loyal customers. They have loyal supporters. These people are willing to buy their product no matter what anyone else says, which is actually really difficult to do. So I think they have the smartest marketing. But keep in mind, Apple has to sell this image, guys. You have to remember that. You know, most of the world's smartphones is still Android. Regardless, I think the worldwide is hitting around 70% total. And for the US market, however, iPhone reached around 52% or 53% last time I checked. And we'll try to update those numbers as well. However, you have to remember very well, Apple is the only one who sells Apple phones. In Android, you have to decide, do I want vanilla Android? Do I want Samsung's touch on this? Do I want Xiaomi's touch on this? Huawei, I don't even think you can have in America anymore. Do I want that? Do I want any one of these other companies? What do they offer me that this guy's not offering me? I can tell you one of the main things that I use with my Pixel, because I travel quite a bit, is the fact that I can talk to most people around the world without even knowing the language. No matter where I am, whether I have connection or not, I can download the language packs and actually talk to anyone. That's a huge feature for me because I travel a lot. So that's something that is definitely a big winner. The camera is another big winner. You know, takes great pictures. I don't really take videos. So that's another thing. I shoot some every now and then, but it's not the main thing. I use my big camera for that. So it's actually quite interesting as to what features brings me back to Pixel versus any other phones. But its AI models are really the main kicker here, you know, where AI means so much on the market now. So that's the main reason why I do use Pixel. And with the Pixel 8 getting better at that, that's going to keep going. So back to Apple. A lot of people in the past that I've noticed who had Android phones said they switched to Apple because they hated the performance. And then you ask them what phones they were using and you realize none of them never had a high-end Android phone. So they compare iPhone's high performance only to the weakest phones from Android, mid-range phones and even low-end phones. So from that perspective, I definitely understand where they're coming from. But a lot of people nowadays are switching from Android over to iPhone, but the ones that I noticed switching from iPhone over to Android are the ones that noticed the performance difference. So performance difference is one thing, but also being able to use things they never thought they would care about. That's a big topic. That in itself can be its own video. So I gotta come back on that and actually talk about that as well. But for a long time, for iPhones, there was no such thing as a mid-range phone. And that's an interesting perspective because, you know, now you have the Pro and the Pro phone, the Pro phones and the non-Pro phones. But we all know with Apple's advertising and the way that they give these benefits, even if you go to T-Mobile and get an iPhone 15 on us, it's an iPhone 15 Pro. It's not the Pro Max, but it's not the regular ones either. So Apple knows the best way to make sure the status stays alive is to sell these Pro phones, which is genius. Once again, it's just something that I tip my hat off to them for. So most people don't really want to carry a regular iPhone. They want the Pro. They want the 3 cameras to show and everything like that. And as far as brand loyalty, I have to say, I think only iPhone has that effect. Or Apple, in this case, has that effect where everyone wants to show off the more expensive product. So when you compare it over to cars, for example, it's like Range Rover. Range Rover sells more of their signature autobiography, the Signature, autobiography versus the other models of the car, which is impressive. Those are $200,000 plus cars, but they sell more of those than the lower end models, or lower end trim levels, I should say. You know, so Apple, I think, in tech just has the best marketing all around. But the biggest difference for new phones is definitely going to be the performance for the average user, with Apple either undervolting the battery or slowing down the processor. And eventually this will make you realize the performance has changed on the phone. You know, and of course it's part of conserving the phone as well, but it will also make you realize the performance on the phone has gone down and it's time to upgrade and get a new phone. But Apple is smart enough, like I said earlier, to make sure that the status still lays with the Pro line phones. The way people get attention for carrying a Pro or a Pro Max is very different than those who carry non-Pros. And that's something that I noticed quite a bit, and it's quite interesting because they're virtually the same phones. Virtually. Not exactly, but I've heard some people see me with a Pixel and, you know, they ask me why I don't have an iPhone. And I've heard some disturbing things, you know. Some people have said the only people who have Android phones in the world are just lazy and obese. So you're saying 70% of the world is lazy and obese? That's an interesting way of thinking about it. Some people say that if you have an Android phone, you are just not as successful as those with an iPhone. And only if you could work a little bit harder, you would have an iPhone. Are people aware that iPhones are not the most expensive phones on the market? And that it is asinine that these companies are even asking for $1,000 for a phone, or $1,500 or $1,700 or whatever crazy prices we're getting into today? Are these people aware of that? Are these people also aware that their iPhones do not cost the price that they pay for it to put together? I really wonder what people are thinking sometimes when they say this stuff.
He's a 10, but he has an Android phone. What's his new rating?
A 3.
That doesn't make sense.
Are you broke? Like, how can you not afford an Apple? I'm sorry.
Are you Delulu? There are more expensive Androids than every Apple iPhone.
It's a 0. Our pictures for Instagram are gonna be terrible.
So you will not date an Android user because of Instagram pictures. This is officially the worst way I have seen somebody choose the potential father of their children.
It's green text and I'm doing blue.
I don't get it. Is the green text going to make you infertile?
iPhone all the way. Why are you having an Android? Go get your money up. Get out of the house.
Jesus Christ, on a motorbike, I am so flabbergasted right now. Who told these people Android users are poor? And why do they sound like I can sell them air in a bottle if I just put Apple logo on it and tell them it's premium air?
I feel like it's a downgrade.
Well, at least this one said she feels like, thank God her feelings are not facts or reality. Too many people live in Delulu land.
If you don't have an iPhone, you're a nerd.
But it's the nerds who made the iPhone. So you will not date the creator and the owner, just the user. With that type of decision-making skills in the young generation right now, we are never going to get flying cars in the future.
I say this to say, this is why I think Apple has the best marketing out there when it comes to tech devices. Because they are smart enough to make people say just about anything to advertise the Apple brand. And if you're not part of them, you're against them. It's almost like Apple against the world. And it's actually quite interesting. And this is why I say Apple, like I said, has the best advertising out there. But tell me what you guys think below as far as the Pixel 8 announcements from Google and everything else that is going on in the world with smartphones, even the iPhone 15 Pro. I'm actually really curious to know how many people are upgrading, because I know the differences are not that much. USB Type-C is a very nice touch to have. The camera's a tad bit better, you know, and really not much else to talk about with iPhone 15 Pro. You know, if you're coming from older models, maybe it makes more sense, but I really would like to know what your guys' opinions are. And thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Peace out, guys. Have a good day.